There's no such thing.
Perfect.
Preference is a part of it, and the kind of materials and way that you've decorated your home is the other part of it. So I guess my preference is a warmer colour temperature, but I come from a Northern European country where we kind of associate warmth and light as a similar kind of thing. Whereas if you go to hotter countries, you notice the preference for lighting is a lot cooler.
I mean, for residential lighting, I would always go for warmer colors, the warmer side of the spectrum. However, I mean, I don't think there's an ideal current temperature, and I do definitely think that it can change room to room. I mean, it can even change in a single room. We've done lots of projects where the decorative lights are in a warmer color, and the technical lighting is in a cooler color. So like there is obviously materials that will pick up certain temperatures of light just because of the nature of the material itself. So there's lots of things to take into consideration, but there is no right or wrong.
I would say it's more related to the cultural background and to the location of the project. And it does change room by room. For example, in a relaxation room in a spa, the color temperature might be much warmer than in a gym, where you might want to boost your energy level and having a slightly cooler color temperature. There are also some instances where we might mix color temperature within the same room, and that's totally acceptable. Different color temperature will help to make different materials popping out. For example, silver is obviously reacting better to a slightly cooler color temperature than gold, for example.
Also comes down to things like how your house is decorated and how big it is. So if you've got a very small Victorian 2 up, 2 down house, it would be a bit unsettling to have different types of lighting. Normally, you would want the journey through the house to be roughly the same, but you'd use accent lighting in certain places to do a certain task. So, for example, in the kitchen, when you're chopping up vegetables, you'd highlight or add more light to a surface to enable you to do that job properly. Or you're putting on makeup in the bathroom, you like a nice even light all the way around the mirror so you can put your makeup on nicely. But you wouldn't necessarily want to lay in the bath and be looking straight up into a downlight. So you need to just kind of think about what you're doing in each of those spaces and use the light accordingly. It's about intensity and where that light's coming from, what you want to use it for. And also, it could be simple as the architecture in your house. If you've got a very white space with lots of floating bits of marble and glass and metal, you might want to light that in quite a cool way. Or if you've got a house that's full of wooden colours or warm colours, you might like to light that in a slightly warmer way. So it has to go hand in hand with things like where your windows are positioned, the daylight that's coming in, the materials that are used in your rooms, paint colours and finishings, and the mood that you want to have in that room.
When I was thinking about your questions the other day, I almost certainly would have said that it's a warm colour temperature, 2,700 or 3,000 degrees Kelvin, and that's normally what we would sort of design to. But as it is so phenomenally hot at the moment, I'm sort of thinking that actually a cooler colour temperature would be something I would really appreciate. People tend to always say that hot countries use cool colour temperatures and colder countries use warm. So I can sort of relate to that. But in general, I would have said in the UK that we look for very, very warm colour temperatures because it makes our skin look lovely.
Choosing a colour temperature of residential can be a little bit difficult. Normally, we default to using 2,700 Kelvin. There are a couple of times that we might vary this. So sometimes when we're dealing with very cool colour schemes within the space, we might move towards using 3,000 Kelvin, just because it complements colder greys and cold blues quite well. But almost always we're using 2,700 Kelvin because that is the colour temperature of an incandescent light bulb on at full power. What I think is really interesting though is the way people perceive colour. They're used to seeing old incandescent and halogen lamps, and one thing that they don't really realise is that these lamps change colour as they dim. So they get warmer as they dim down. So what can be a factor when you choose color temperatures? Overall, we go with 2700. But if we're looking to create a really low level light scene, we're trying to build some moodiness into the scene and atmosphere, we might actually combine it with 2400 or 2200 and we transition between those different color temperatures. But the reason everyone goes with 2700 is because it is linked to incandescent light, and a lot of people have grown up used to that. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens though in the future, in 20, 30 years time, when people haven't grown up with incandescent light. It can change room by room as well. If you're doing bathrooms and kitchens, those ones can benefit from a little bit cooler light. 3000 is still a warm light, but we can use those within those areas just to give something which is a little bit cleaner. It's something though we have to consider on a project by project basis, and we actually test light sources within the space, on finishes that the client is going to have to make sure that they get the right color temperature. And that can be the best approach. Getting a couple of test lamps to try it out before you get started is a really good way to confirm that.
I think perceived brightness is definitely a component. And then there's also it is also that sort of preference of, I personally don't like a lot of light. I like it to be really atmospheric, and I really hate direct light. Like, I make sure that everything is hidden and there's always like light emanating from somewhere or bounced off of something else. But it's that idea of like, you want really low levels of soft light to make everyone look fantastic. But then it depends on what you're using your home for. So I think like the idea of perceived brightness is also what you do for leisure. So if you're like an avid reader, then you probably want more light. Whereas I'm like, let's have a drink and make everyone look fabulous.